Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some pretty groundbreaking research that's flipping a long-held belief about autism on its head. It turns out there might be this whole hidden emotional world we just haven't been able to see. Until now.
Yeah, let's start with this image because it's just perfect. For decades, our understanding of autism has been like looking at just the tip of this iceberg. We only see the observable behaviors, what's right there on the surface. But what this new research is showing us is that, wow, that is a dangerously incomplete picture. There's this massive, complex reality hidden just underneath.
And this quote from the study, this is really the key to everything. The autistic social-emotional code is there, waiting for us to discover it. It's not that the code is missing or broken. We just haven't had the right tools to read it. And that, right there, completely shifts the conversation from seeing a deficit to understanding a difference. A difference that's just been invisible to us.
All right, so let's get into it. First up, the tip of the iceberg. We need to really understand the problem with our traditional approach. Why have we been missing so much for so long?
Okay, so here's the deal. The traditional way of looking at this is called the deficit model, and it's based entirely on what a person can see with their own two eyes. The problem? Well, that's totally subjective, right? And it's led to some really damaging misconceptions. Things like autistic people lack empathy, or they don't want to connect. And that stuff creates real stigma, real social barriers for people.
So, the big question is, how do we see past the limits of our own eyes? Well, this is where it gets really cool. This is where technology steps in. Researchers are now using this new kind of tool, what they call a digital lens, to finally see what's beneath the surface.
And you can see the difference right here. On one hand, you have the naked eye, subjective, biased, it misses all the fast, subtle stuff. But on the other hand, you have this new digital lens. It's objective, it's quantitative, it's capturing thousands of tiny facial micro-movements that are literally invisible to us. It's not guessing or interpreting behavior, it's measuring the data directly. That's a huge leap.
And it's really amazing how simple and accessible this whole process is. It's just 3 steps. First, you just record a super short 5-second video on a regular webcam or even your phone. Step 2, you run it through some software that maps and tracks 68 different points on the face. And finally, you analyze it. You use these new statistical methods to measure the speed and all the tiny variations in those movements. It's that simple. It's not this big, scary lab setup. It's powerful stuff.
And check this out. This is what that digital lens actually sees. You go from a human face on the left to this incredibly complex digital map of its hidden movements on the right. Every single one of those little swirling lines is the path of just one of those 68 points over a few seconds. It's turning a simple expression into a massive amount of data, revealing patterns of motion we could never, ever see on our own.
Okay, so we've got the tool. Now for the really exciting part. What did this data actually show us? This is where it gets absolutely fascinating. We're talking about uncovering a hidden emotional language.
So, this all boils down to one central question the researchers were trying to answer. Do autistic individuals actually show the facial muscle activity that we associate with universal emotions? When they make an angry face or a happy face, are the same fundamental muscles firing?
And the answer the data gives back is a clear, resounding yes. Absolutely. But we've been missing it. The machinery is there. It's active. It's firing away. We've just been completely blind to the signals.
Okay, let's look at a concrete example to really see what this means. This table breaks down what's happening during an angry expression. These action units, or AUs, are just specific facial muscles. And look, AU4, the brow lower, and AU7, the lid tightener, they're present for both neurotypical folks and autistic folks. Now sure, there are some differences, like you see with AU5 and AU9, but the core fundamental building blocks for that emotion, they're totally there. They're shared.
So here's the big takeaway, the absolute crucial point. The difference isn't in what muscles are being used, it's in the intensity and the variability of how they're moving. The emotional machinery is all there. It just operates in a different range, at a different speed, with a different rhythm than what many of us are tuned to expect.
I love this analogy because it just clicks. Think of it like a different dialect. It's not a completely foreign language. The words, the grammar, the muscles are the same. But the rhythm, the intonation, the accent, it's all different. And it's just unfamiliar to our ears, or in this case, our eyes.
There's actually a scientific concept for this. It's called the perceptual Umwelt. It's this idea that every living thing experiences its own unique sensory world. A bee sees flowers differently than we do, right? Well, what this research is saying is that autistic facial expressions might just exist in a sensory range that many of our brains aren't naturally tuned to pick up. It's like our perceptual radar is set to a slightly different frequency.
So what does all this mean? Well, this discovery is huge, and it calls for a really profound shift in how we think about everything. It's about moving from fixing someone to co-adapting with them.
The goal then totally changes. It's not about trying to normalize artistic individuals or, make them perform their emotions in a way that fits our narrow expectations. No. The research suggests that the onus is on us, the observers, to expand our own perceptual world. The responsibility actually shifts to us.
And as the researchers say, co-adapting our ranges and the ASD ranges is indeed possible now. This is the new path forward. Technology, like this digital lens, can act as a translator, helping us learn this dialect. It opens the door for true co-adaptation, where we meet in the middle instead of demanding that all the change comes from one side.
So let's wrap this up. Why does all this discovery matter so much? What's the bottom line here? Well, it's all about building new bridges for human connection.
Well, for one, it completely challenges that harmful, persistent myth that autistic people lack emotion. It gives us objective tools that can complement subjective diagnoses. Most importantly, it proves that the potential, the wiring for emotional connection, is there. It really empowers us to close that social gap, not by changing people, but by understanding them better.
At the end of the day, this research just flips the old script on its head. For so long, we've been asking autistic people to change, to be understood.
But this leaves us with a much more powerful and, honestly, more exciting question. What if we learned to see the world through their lens? What if we finally took on the job of learning to see this incredibly vibrant, complex, emotional world that's been there right in front of us the whole time?